His breathing has become almost imperceptible, his posture reflecting the perfect balance between complete relaxation and natural stability that characterizes the deepest states of meditative rest. In his peaceful presence, we see reflected the ultimate goal of traditional craft practice, not just the production of useful objects, but the cultivation of human consciousness capable of profound peace, sustained attention, and effortless alignment with natural and cosmic rhythms. The forge fire continues its gentle crackling, but even these sounds have become softer and more rhythmic, creating an acoustic environment that seems perfectly calibrated to support the transition into sleep. The flames dance with hypnotic beauty, their patterns creating a visual meditation that draws the eye into increasingly deep states of relaxed absorption. As we gaze into this ancient fire, we feel our own consciousness naturally settling into the receptive awareness that precedes and facilitates the healing journey of sleep. The tools and materials of the workshop, illuminated by the gentle firelight, seem to radiate their own peaceful energy, as if the accumulated labor and dedication of generations of craftsmen has imbued these simple objects with something approaching sacred presence. Each hammer and tongs, each piece of worked iron, each carefully maintained surface speaks of human hands guided by traditional wisdom in service of both practical needs and transcendent values. In this environment of consecrated labor and ancient practice, we find ourselves naturally attuning to frequencies of awareness that transcend the ordinary boundaries of individual consciousness. The workshop's collection of completed work, visible in the gentle shadows cast by the forge light, tells the story of human creativity applied to the eternal task of transforming raw materials into objects of beauty and utility. But now, in the deep peace of night, these practical achievements take on qualities of spiritual significance, reminding us that all genuine creative activity participates in the cosmic process of manifestation, where formless potential takes on specific expression through the patient application of skill, dedication, and love. The master's breathing has become so deep and regular that it seems to merge with the natural rhythms of the workshop itself. The gentle crackling of the fire, the subtle settling of timber and stone, the almost imperceptible movement of air through the carefully designed spaces that provide both warmth and ventilation. His consciousness appears to have settled into that profound state of rest that traditional teachings describe as the gateway to the deepest mysteries of sleep, where individual awareness dissolves into the larger field of cosmic consciousness that underlies all particular forms and phenomena. The apprentice's own journey into sleep reflects the natural conclusion of a day spent in meaningful labor and contemplative observation. His face, relaxed in the gentle firelight, shows the peace that comes from honest work performed with attention and care, from skills developed through patient practice, from participation in traditions that connect individual effort to larger purposes and transcendent values. As we watch his breathing deepen and slow, we see reflected our own natural movement toward the restorative states that will prepare consciousness for renewal and awakening. The workshop's atmosphere has become so conducive to deep rest that even the act of conscious observation seems to dissolve into something more like participatory awareness, where the boundaries between observer and observed fade into a unified field of peaceful presence. The ancient walls seem to breathe with accumulated wisdom. The time-tested tools radiate their own quiet energy, and the gentle fire provides just enough light to maintain connection with the physical world while facilitating the gradual release that prepares consciousness for its nightly journey into the healing darkness of sleep. As the last conscious thoughts begin to fade into the approaching embrace of sleep, we feel ourselves naturally surrendering to the profound trust that this ancient sanctuary inspires. Here, surrounded by the tools and products of generations of skilled craftsmen, warmed by fire that connects us to the earliest human discoveries, breathing air perfumed with the honest scents of wood and metal and purposeful labor, we find ourselves in conditions perfectly designed for the deepest possible rest and the most complete release from all forms of tension and preoccupation. The forge fire settles into its final configuration for the night, burning with just enough flame to maintain its life through the dark hours, while creating conditions of optimal peace for the sleep that now approaches like a gentle tide. The light grows softer and more golden, the sounds more rhythmic and hypnotic, the atmosphere more conducive to the complete surrender that allows consciousness to make its natural transition from waking awareness to the healing mysteries of dream and deep sleep. In this sacred space, where fire and iron have been combined by human skill for countless generations, where traditional wisdom has been preserved and transmitted through the patient relationship between master and apprentice, where the practical needs of daily life have been met through the application of dedication, skill, and love, we find ourselves naturally releasing into the profound rest that restores both body and soul. The workshop becomes a temple of peace, the craftsmen, priests of ancient wisdom, and we privileged participants in the eternal human journey toward the healing darkness where consciousness is renewed and prepared for the endless creative possibilities of each new dawn. As sleep gently embraces us in this sanctuary of traditional wisdom and ancient peace, we carry with us the deep satisfaction of having witnessed the timeless dance of human creativity, the profound contentment that comes from observing work performed with skill and dedication, and the healing peace that emerges when we align ourselves with rhythms older and more fundamental than the urgent complexities of modern life. In the gentle darkness that now enfolds us, we rest in the confidence that we have touched something eternal and true, something that will continue to nurture and sustain us long after this peaceful night has passed into memory. The last flicker of conscious awareness dissolves into the infinite peace of sleep, carrying us into dreams filled with the ancient wisdom of fire and metal, skill and tradition, master and apprentice, working together in the sacred dance of human creativity that connects each individual moment to the eternal patterns of cosmic order and divine love. In this final surrender to the healing mysteries of night, we find the deepest rest, the most complete peace, and the perfect preparation for whatever creative possibilities await us in the dawning light of tomorrow's endless potential. The crackling of flames fills the quiet evening air as we settle into our contemplative journey through time. Tonight, we travel back to the medieval world, a place where life moved at the pace of seasons, where craftsmanship was an art form passed down through generations, and where the rhythms of daily existence were dictated by sunrise and sunset, church bells, and market days. Picture, if you will, a typical medieval village in the heart of England, sometime around the year 1300. The sun is setting behind rolling hills dotted with sheep, casting long shadows across narrow dirt paths that wind between modest timber-framed houses. Smoke rises gently from chimneys, carrying the scent of wood fires and evening meals. The air is crisp and clean, filled with the earthy aromas of freshly turned soil, hay drying in fields, and the distant fragrance of wildflowers growing along hedgerows. In this peaceful village, Nestled between the parish church, with its sturdy stone tower and the Lord's manor house visible on a distant hill, stands a workshop that has been the center of community life for generations. This is the blacksmith's forge, and as we approach it in the gathering dusk, we can hear the final echoes of hammer striking anvil, the hiss of hot metal being quenched in water, and the gentle whooshing of bellows, breathing life into glowing coals. The medieval blacksmith occupied a position of unique importance in village society. Unlike farmers who worked with the soil, or merchants who dealt in finished goods, the blacksmith was a transformer of raw materials, a master of fire and metal who could take rough iron ore and shape it into the tools and implements that made civilized life possible. Every horseshoe that protected a traveling merchant's mount, every plow blade that turned the earth for spring planting, every door hinge that secured a family's home, all of these essential items began their lives in the controlled chaos of the blacksmith's workshop. The craft of blacksmithing required not just physical strength, though that was certainly necessary, but also an intimate understanding of materials, temperatures, and techniques that took years to master. A master blacksmith could judge the heat of iron simply by its color in the dim light of the forge. He knew exactly when metal had reached the perfect temperature for shaping, when it would bend without breaking, when it needed to be reheated, and when it was ready for the final quenching that would give it strength and durability. The workshop itself was a marvel of practical design, evolved over centuries to serve the blacksmith's needs. The forge, built of stone and clay, sat at the heart of the space, its fire burning bright orange and yellow, casting dancing shadows on smoke-blackened walls. The bellows, operated by an apprentice or sometimes by the blacksmith himself, sent streams of air into the coals, raising the temperature to the intense heat needed to make iron malleable. The anvil, that iconic symbol of the blacksmith's trade, stood solid and unmovable, its surface polished smooth by countless hours of hammering, its distinctive shape designed to provide different surfaces for different types of metalwork. Around the workshop, tools hung in careful order, hammers of various weights and shapes, tongs for gripping hot metal, files for smoothing rough edges, punches for making holes, and chisels for cutting and shaping. Each tool had been made by the blacksmith himself or inherited from his master, and each had its specific purpose in the complex dance of transforming raw iron into finished products. The daily life of a medieval blacksmith began before dawn. As the first pale light appeared in the eastern sky, he would rise from his simple bed in the living quarters attached to or above his workshop. After breaking his fast with bread, ale, and perhaps some cheese or dried meat, he would begin the process of rekindling his forge. This was no simple matter of striking a match. Medieval fire-making required skill and patience, using flint and steel, or perhaps preserving coals from the previous day's work banked carefully in ash. He would coax new flames to life, adding kindling and then larger pieces of charcoal or wood to build the intense heat his work required. As the fire grew stronger and the workshop began to warm, the blacksmith would review the day's planned work. Perhaps there were horseshoes to be made for the local stable, or a farmer needed repair work done on his plow. Maybe the village priest had commissioned new hinges for the church door, or a wealthy merchant required decorative ironwork for his home. Each project would require different techniques, different temperatures, different tools. The physical demands of blacksmithing were enormous. Standing for hours beside a blazing forge in all weather, wielding heavy hammers with precision and control, handling red-hot metal With nothing but tongs and experience, these activities required not just strength, but also endurance and concentration. The blacksmith's body bore the marks of his trade. Arms and shoulders developed from swinging hammers, hands scarred from occasional contact with hot metal, eyes adapted to reading the subtle color changes that indicated proper temperature, and lungs accustomed to working in the smoke and sparks of the forge. Yet for all its physical challenges, blacksmithing was also a highly respected profession. In a world where most people worked the land or served in households, the blacksmith was an independent craftsman, a master of specialized knowledge that made him essential to his community. He was often among the more prosperous villagers, able to afford better food, clothing, and housing than common laborers. His workshop was a gathering place where men would come not just for metalwork, but for news, conversation, and the warmth of the forge on cold days. The apprenticeship system that trained new blacksmiths was both demanding and nurturing. A young boy, typically around the age of 12 or 14, would be apprenticed to a master blacksmith for a period of 7 years. During this time, he would live in the master's household, receiving food, clothing, and shelter in exchange for his labor and attention to learning. The early years of apprenticeship involved mostly menial tasks, keeping the fire burning, operating the bellows, cleaning tools, and running errands. But gradually, as the apprentice proved his dedication and began to understand the fundamentals of the craft, he would be allowed to handle simpler tasks, always under the watchful eye of his master. The relationship between master and apprentice was complex, combining elements of teacher and student, father and son, employer and employee. A good master took seriously his responsibility to pass on not just technical skills, but also the ethical standards of the craft, the importance of honest dealing with customers, and the pride that came from creating something useful and beautiful with one's own hands. As evening approaches in our medieval village, the blacksmith's work for the day is nearly done. The forge fire burns lower now, and the steady rhythm of hammer on anvil has given way to the quieter sounds of cleaning and organizing tools for the next day's work. The apprentice sweeps metal filings from around the anvil and banks the coals to preserve them through the night. The master examines the day's completed work, perhaps a set of horseshoes cooling on the workbench, or a repaired farm implement ready for tomorrow's collection. As the last light of day fades into the soft purple of twilight, we find ourselves walking slowly along the village's main path, our footsteps quiet on the packed earth, worn smooth by countless generations of travelers, merchants, pilgrims, and local folk going about their daily business. The air has cooled with the setting sun, carrying with it a mixture of scents that speak of medieval life: wood smoke from hearth fires, the sweet smell of hay stored in barns, the earthy dampness of well-tended gardens, and that distinctive metallic tang that always seems to linger near the blacksmith's forge. The village around us is settling into its evening rhythms. From the windows of timber-framed houses, warm golden light flickers through oiled parchment or thin scraped horn that serves as glazing. These gentle lights speak of families gathering for their evening meal, of simple but nourishing food shared around wooden tables by the light of tallow candles or oil lamps. We can hear the distant lowing of cattle being brought in for the night, the soft clucking of chickens settling into their roosts, and the occasional bark of a dog alerting its household to some minor disturbance. The parish church, its stone walls darkened by age and weather, stands solid and reassuring against the deepening sky. Its bell tower reaches toward the first stars beginning to appear, and we can see the warm glow from its windows suggesting that the priest is within, perhaps preparing for evening prayers or tending to his studies by candlelight. The churchyard around it is peaceful, its weathered headstones and ancient yew trees creating a contemplative atmosphere that seems to invite quiet reflection. As we continue our approach toward the blacksmith's workshop, we notice how the building stands somewhat apart from the main cluster of village houses. This separation is both practical and necessary. The noise, sparks, and smoke of metalworking require space and consideration for neighbors, but it also gives the forge a special character, marking it as a place where the ordinary transformations of daily life give way to something more fundamental and elemental. The workshop building itself is a study in medieval practicality and durability. Built primarily of local stone with timber framing, its walls are thick enough to contain the heat of the forge while protecting the surrounding area from fire hazards. The roof, covered in clay tiles, or perhaps thatch, depending on local materials and customs, slopes steeply to shed rain and snow. A substantial chimney rises from one end, designed to draw smoke and sparks safely away from the working area, while providing the draft necessary to maintain a proper fire temperature. What strikes us most immediately as we draw closer is the way the workshop seems to glow from within. Even though the day's heavy work is done, the forge fire continues to burn with a steady, mesmerizing light that flickers and dances, sending warm orange and red reflections dancing across the interior walls. This light spills out through the wide opening that serves as the main entrance during working hours, creating a welcoming beacon in the gathering darkness. The sound that emerges from the workshop has changed from the rhythmic hammering of active metalwork to something more subtle and contemplative. We can hear the gentle crackling of burning charcoal, the occasional hiss and pop of sap in wood fuel, and the soft whooshing sound of air moving through the fire as it breathes with natural drafts. These sounds create a kind of medieval lullaby, rhythmic and soothing, speaking of controlled fire and purposeful warmth rather than destruction or chaos. Standing at the threshold of this workspace, we begin to appreciate the careful organization that makes such complex work possible. Every tool has its designated place, every material its proper storage location. Iron stock of various sizes and shapes is arranged along one wall, sorted by thickness and length for easy selection. Finished pieces await collection by their owners or delivery to customers throughout the village and surrounding countryside. Work in progress occupies the central area near the forge, each piece representing hours of careful planning and skilled execution. The apprentice, a young man of perhaps 16 years, moves quietly about his evening duties. His movements speak of familiarity with this environment, of countless repetitions that have made even complex tasks seem natural and effortless. He checks the water barrel used for quenching hot metal, ensuring it will be ready for tomorrow's work. He arranges tools in their proper order, knowing that in the heat and urgency of metalworking, efficiency and organization can mean the difference between success and frustration, between safety and accident. The master blacksmith himself presents a figure that embodies both the physical demands and the quiet dignity of his craft. His hands, large and calloused from years of gripping hammer handles and manipulating hot metal, move with surprising gentleness as he examines completed work or adjusts the position of tools. His eyes, accustomed to reading the subtle color changes that indicate proper metal temperature, seem to miss nothing in his domain. His bearing suggests both the confidence that comes from mastery of difficult skills and the humility of one who works with forces, fire, metal, physics, that demand constant respect and attention. As we settle ourselves comfortably nearby, perhaps on a simple wooden bench, placed where visitors can observe the work without interfering, we become aware of the workshop's unique atmosphere. This is a place where ancient elements, fire, iron, water, air, combine under human guidance to create objects of practical beauty and enduring utility. The very air seems charged with possibility, with the potential for transformation that lies at the heart of all true craftsmanship. The warmth radiating from the forge creates a comfortable microclimate that stands in pleasant contrast to the cooling evening air outside. This warmth is not just physical, but somehow spiritual as well, speaking of human ingenuity and determination, of the long struggle of our species to shape the natural world, to serve our needs while respecting its fundamental laws and limitations. The light from the forge fire plays across surfaces throughout the workshop, creating an ever-changing display of shadows and highlights that seems almost alive. Iron tools gleam with reflected flame. Wooden handles show the polish of countless hours of use, and the massive anvil catches the light on its well-worn surface. Testament to generations of productive labor, this interplay of light and shadow, of flame and metal, creates a scene that speaks to something deep in human experience, our ancient relationship with fire, and our endless fascination with the process of creation through controlled destruction and reformation. As we prepare to spend this contemplative evening in the company of medieval craftsmen, we feel ourselves beginning to relax into the rhythms of a simpler time. Here, far from the complications of modern life, we find ourselves in a place where work has meaning beyond mere economic necessity, where skill is passed from generation to generation through patient teaching and dedicated learning, where the fruits of labor are tangible, useful, and built to last for years or even generations. The evening air carries sounds from the wider village, perhaps the distant sound of singing from a tavern, the bark of a dog settling some territorial dispute, or the gentle conversation of neighbors bidding each other good night. But here, in the forge, these sounds seem muted and distant, filtered through the immediate presence of fire and iron, of ancient crafts and timeless skills. With quiet steps, we cross the threshold into the blacksmith's workshop, entering a world where time seems to move at a different pace, where the urgent demands of modern life give way to the steady, contemplative rhythms of medieval craftsmanship. The transition from the cool evening air outside to the warm, enveloping atmosphere of the forge feels like stepping into a sanctuary dedicated to the ancient arts of fire and metal. The first sensation that greets us is the warmth, not the harsh, overwhelming heat of the forge at full working temperature, but a gentle, enveloping warmth that seems to emanate from every surface touched by centuries of fire and metalwork. The stone walls, blackened by years of smoke and sparks, radiate stored heat like a medieval battery, creating a microclimate that remains comfortable even as the world outside grows cold with approaching night. Our eyes, adjusting gradually to the interior light, begin to distinguish the subtle gradations of illumination that characterize this workspace. The forge fire provides the primary source of light, its flames dancing with hypnotic beauty, painting the interior walls with constantly shifting patterns of orange and gold. But there are other sources of illumination as well. An oil lamp burning steadily on the workbench, a candle flickering in a wall niche near the tool storage area, and the subtle glow of hot metal that retains heat from the day's work. The apprentice acknowledges our presence with a respectful nod, then returns to his evening duties with the quiet efficiency of someone who has performed these tasks hundreds of times. We watch as he moves through his routine, checking the security of valuable tools, organizing materials for the next day's work, ensuring that all fire hazards are properly managed and contained. His movements have an almost ritualistic quality, speaking of traditions passed down through generations of craftsmen, each master teaching his apprentice not just the technical skills of the trade, but also the habits of care and responsibility that ensure both quality and safety. The master blacksmith, his day's heavy labor complete, moves with the deliberate pace of someone who has learned to conserve energy and motion for maximum efficiency. We observe as he examines a piece of work completed earlier in the day, perhaps a set of door hinges destined for a merchant's house or a collection of nails for a carpenter's project. His inspection is thorough but relaxed, the practiced eye of an expert, checking not just for obvious flaws, but for the subtle imperfections that might compromise function or durability over time. As we settle into our observation post, we become increasingly aware of the rich sensory environment that surrounds us. The sound of the forge fire is like a medieval meditation, a constant, soft crackling, punctuated by occasional pops and hisses as pockets of moisture in the fuel turn to steam and escape. The bellows, operated now only occasionally to maintain proper fire temperature, create a rhythmic whooshing sound that seems to echo the breathing of some great, benevolent creature. The scents that fill the workshop tell the story of the blacksmith's craft in aromatic language. There is the clean, sharp smell of hot iron, metallic, but not unpleasant, speaking of materials pushed to their limits and reformed according to human will. The smoke from the forge carries hints of different fuels: charcoal made from oak and ash, coal brought from distant mines, perhaps even fragments of aromatic wood added to modify the fire's character for specific tasks. Underlying these dominant scents are subtler notes: the leather of the bellows, the oil used to protect tools from rust, the water in the quenching tub, and that indefinable aroma of old wood and stone that characterizes buildings that have sheltered the same activities for generations. The textures visible in the workshop speak to the honest nature of medieval craftsmanship. Every surface shows the marks of use and age. The anvil's top polished to mirror brightness by countless hammer blows, tool handles worn smooth by generations of hands, wooden beams darkened by smoke and age, but still solid and strong. The stone walls show the skilled work of medieval masons, each block carefully shaped and fitted, designed to last for centuries, and proving their worth by still standing strong after hundreds of years. In one corner of the workshop, we notice a small shrine or simple cross mounted on the wall, perhaps with a flickering candle before it. This religious element reminds us that medieval craftsmen saw their work not merely as economic activity, but as a form of service to God and community. The creation of useful objects from raw materials was understood as participation in the ongoing work of creation, a way of using God-given talents to serve human needs and improve the condition of life for all. The apprentice completes his evening routines and settles onto a simple stool near the forge, where he takes up a piece of metal and begins working on what appears to be a personal project, perhaps a small tool for his own use, or a practice piece to develop his skills in some particular technique. The quiet scraping of file on metal creates a gentle, rhythmic sound that blends harmoniously with the crackling of the fire and the soft sounds of the master's continuing inspection of completed work. As we watch this peaceful evening scene unfold, we begin to understand something important about medieval life and work. Unlike our modern world, where work and leisure are sharply separated, where professional life and personal life occupy different spheres. The medieval workshop represents a more integrated approach to human activity. The blacksmith lives above or adjacent to his workplace. His family is involved in the business. His apprentices are members of the household. And his craft provides not just economic support, but also social identity, community standing, and personal fulfillment. The master blacksmith moves to a storage area where iron stock is carefully organized by size and quality. Even this simple task of inventory and organization has a contemplative quality as he handles each piece of metal with the respect due to valuable materials that will soon be transformed into useful objects. Iron in the medieval world was precious, in a way difficult for us to understand, not as easily obtained as in our modern age of industrial production, but requiring complex processes of mining, smelting, and refining that made every piece valuable and worthy of careful conservation. The workshop's organization reflects centuries of evolution in craft practice. Every aspect of the layout has been carefully considered for maximum efficiency and safety. The forge is positioned to take advantage of natural air currents for proper ventilation while remaining protected from rain and wind. The anvil stands at precisely the right height for efficient hammerwork, positioned where the smith can see his work clearly by forge light while maintaining easy access to tools and materials. Water for quenching is kept close enough for quick access, but far enough from the fire to avoid dangerous steam explosions. As the evening progresses and the workshop settles into its nighttime rhythm, we feel ourselves relaxing into the contemplative pace of medieval life. Here, surrounded by the honest products of skilled hands, warmed by the ancient element of fire, breathing air perfumed with the scents of wood and metal, and honest labor, we begin to understand something of what our ancestors knew about the satisfaction that comes from work well done, from skills honestly acquired and faithfully practiced, from participation in the ancient human drama of transforming raw materials into objects of beauty and utility. The light from the forge continues to dance and flicker, creating an ever-changing display of shadows and highlights that seems designed for meditation and peaceful contemplation. In this ancient workshop, surrounded by the tools and products of traditional craftsmanship, we find ourselves naturally slowing down, breathing more deeply, allowing the cares and complexities of modern life to fade into the background as we immerse ourselves in the timeless rhythms of fire and metal, skill and tradition, master and apprentice working together in the ageless dance of human creativity. As we make ourselves comfortable in this sanctuary of medieval craftsmanship, we begin to appreciate the deeper rhythms that govern life in the blacksmith's workshop. The initial impressions of warmth, light, and purposeful activity gradually give way to a more subtle understanding of the profound connections between craftsman and material, between tradition and innovation, between the individual artisan and the larger community that depends upon his skills. The master blacksmith has completed his inspection of the day's work and now turns his attention to preparing for tomorrow's tasks. With movements that speak of decades of experience, he selects pieces of iron stock for upcoming projects, examining each piece with the practiced eye of someone who can read the history and potential of metal as easily as a scholar reads manuscript text. Some pieces show the characteristic grain structure of good wrought iron, suitable for items requiring strength and flexibility. Others display the more uniform structure of cast iron, appropriate for applications where hardness and wear resistance are paramount. As he works, the master occasionally shares observations with his apprentice, passing along the accumulated wisdom of his craft in the age-old tradition of oral instruction. These are not formal lessons, but casual comments arising naturally from the work at hand, observations about the quality of different iron sources, techniques for achieving particular effects, warnings about common mistakes that can ruin hours of work or create dangerous situations. The apprentice listens with the focused attention of someone who understands that this informal instruction represents knowledge that cannot be found in any book, wisdom earned through years of trial and error, success, and occasional failure. The forge fire has settled into its evening rhythm, burning with the steady, contemplative flame of well-managed fuel and properly adjusted airflow. The master checks the fire periodically, adding small amounts of charcoal or adjusting the bellows to maintain the perfect balance of heat and oxygen that will preserve the coals through the night while preventing waste of precious fuel. This fire management is an art in itself, requiring understanding of different fuel types, airflow patterns, and the subtle signs that indicate proper combustion conditions. In the gentle light of forge and lamp, we can observe the incredible variety of objects that have emerged from this workshop over the years. Horseshoes of different sizes hang from pegs along one wall, each shaped to fit the specific anatomy of different horse breeds and uses. Draft horses require heavy, broad shoes with thick material and prominent nails holes, while riding horses need lighter, more delicate shoes that provide protection without interfering with speed or agility. Pony shoes are smaller and more delicate, still requiring precise work to achieve proper fit and function. Agricultural tools occupy another section of storage space, representing the blacksmith's crucial role in feeding the community. Plow blades show the careful attention to edge geometry that makes the difference between efficient soil turning and exhausting labor for the farmer. Hoe blades display the subtle curves that allow effective weed cutting without excessive effort. Sickles and scythes demonstrate the smith's understanding of metallurgy. These tools require hard, sharp edges for cutting grain, but also tough, flexible spines that can withstand the repetitive stresses of harvest work. Household items reveal the blacksmith's skill in creating objects that combine utility with beauty. Door hinges show not just a functional excellence, but also decorative elements that reflect the smith's artistic sensibilities and the customer's preferences. Some are plain and sturdy, designed for service buildings or simple homes, while others incorporate scrollwork, geometric patterns, or stylized plant forms that speak of higher status commissions and the smith's ability to work as an artist as well as a craftsman. The apprentice continues his personal project, working by the steady light of the forge on what appears to be a small knife or tool. His technique shows the influence of his master's teaching, but also the hesitancy natural to someone still developing confidence in his skills. We watch as he files carefully along an edge, checking his progress frequently, adjusting his grip and technique in response to the metal's behavior. This patient, methodical approach to skill development represents one of the great strengths of the apprenticeship system. The opportunity to learn through guided practice, with mistakes corrected gently and successes reinforced through encouragement and increasing responsibility. The sounds of the workshop create a natural meditation soundtrack for our contemplative evening. The gentle crackling of the forge fire provides a constant baseline, punctuated by the soft scraping of the apprentice's file, the occasional clink of metal against metal as the master handles tools or stock, and the subtle creaking of wooden beams settling in response to the day's thermal cycles. These sounds blend harmoniously with distant noises from the village, perhaps the soft conversation of neighbors enjoying the mild evening air, the distant sound of a song from the tavern, or the gentle lowing of cattle settling for the night in their byres. The workshop's atmosphere of concentrated craftsmanship creates a natural environment for reflection on the nature of skill and its development. Here, surrounded by the tools and products of generations of metal workers, we can contemplate the patient process by which human beings transform raw ability into refined expertise. The master blacksmith represents the culmination of this process, someone whose hands have learned to work almost independently of conscious thought, whose eyes can read metal temperatures with scientific precision, whose understanding of materials and techniques has been refined through thousands of hours of practice and application. Yet even this master continues to learn and develop. Medieval craftsmanship was not static, but constantly evolving as smiths shared techniques, experimented with new approaches, and responded to changing needs and demands from their communities. The master occasionally consults written notes about new techniques heard from traveling craftsmen, or examines samples of work produced in other regions to understand different approaches to common problems. This combination of respect for tradition with openness to innovation represents one of the great strengths of medieval craft culture. As we observe the interaction between master and apprentice, we witness one of humanity's most enduring and effective educational relationships. The apprentice learns not just specific techniques, but also the broader attitudes and values that define true craftsmanship: respect for materials, patience with the learning process, pride in work well done, honesty in dealings with customers, and commitment to maintaining the reputation of the craft. These values are transmitted not through formal instruction, but through daily example, through the countless small interactions that occur when skilled and dedicated people work closely together toward common goals. The light from the forge continues to cast its warm glow throughout the workshop, creating an atmosphere of contemplative productivity that seems perfectly suited to quiet reflection and peaceful observation. In this ancient space, where fire and iron have been combined by human skill for countless generations, we find ourselves naturally attuning to rhythms older and more fundamental than the urgent pace of modern life. The gentle sounds, the warm light, the honest sense of wood and metal and fire all combine to create an environment that invites us to slow down, to breathe deeply, to allow our minds to settle into the peaceful contemplation of timeless human activities. The workshop represents more than just a place of business. It is a sanctuary of human creativity, a space where raw materials are transformed through skill and patience into objects that serve essential human needs. Here, in the contemplative atmosphere of controlled fire and purposeful work, we begin to understand something profound about the relationship between human beings and the material world, about the satisfaction that comes from work that serves others while developing our own capabilities, about the deep peace that can be found in the patient practice of skills that connect us to generations of predecessors and successors in the great ongoing project of human civilization. In the deepening tranquility of the workshop evening, we find ourselves drawn into a profound contemplation of the medieval craftsman's relationship with his materials, his tools, and the ancient traditions that give meaning to his daily labor. The forge fire burns with steady persistence, its flames dancing in patterns that seem to mirror the creative processes that have unfolded in this space for countless generations. As we settle more deeply into this contemplative atmosphere, we begin to perceive layers of meaning and tradition that extend far beyond the simple transformation of iron into useful objects. The master blacksmith moves to his workbench, where he begins the careful maintenance rituals that ensure his tools will serve him faithfully in tomorrow's work. Each tool receives individual attention. Hammers are checked for proper handle fit and head alignment. Tongs are examined for proper jaw alignment and spring tension. Files are cleaned of metal particles that might clog their cutting surfaces. This tool maintenance is both practical necessity and meditative practice, requiring focused attention while providing space for quiet reflection on the day's accomplishments and tomorrow's challenges. As we watch these careful, methodical movements, we begin to understand that the relationship between craftsman and tool in the medieval world was far more intimate and personal than in our age of mass-produced implements. Each tool in the blacksmith's workshop has been either made by the smith himself or carefully selected and modified to suit his particular hands and working style. The handles show the wear patterns of his specific grip. The striking surfaces bear the marks of his particular technique, and the overall balance reflects his individual preferences for weight distribution and leverage. The apprentice has completed his filing work and now turns to the ancient practice of sharpening, using progressively finer stones to bring his blade to a keen edge. The rhythmic sound of steel against stone creates a gentle, meditative backdrop to our contemplation, while the apprentice's focused concentration demonstrates the kind of absorbed tension that craftwork naturally cultivates. In this patient process of gradual refinement, we see reflected the entire journey of skill development, the way mastery emerges not from sudden inspiration, but from countless repetitions of basic actions, each one slightly better than the last. The workshop's collection of raw materials tells the story of medieval trade and craftsmanship in silent eloquence. Iron arrives here in various forms, some as rough blooms directly from the smelting process, still showing the characteristic texture of metal that has been heated and hammered, but not yet refined to final form. Other pieces show the marks of preliminary shaping at water-powered trip hammers, the massive mechanical devices that could accomplish in minutes the rough forming work that would take a smith hours with hand tools. The variety of these materials speaks to the complex network of specialists that supported even a simple village blacksmith. Miners who extracted ore from the earth, smelters who transformed ore into usable metal, haulers who transported materials along primitive roads, and merchants who coordinated the flow of materials from source to end user. In the gentle light of forge and lamp, we can observe the subtle but crucial differences between various types of iron and steel available to the medieval smith. Some pieces show the layered structure of pattern welded steel, where strips of different carbon content have been twisted and folded together to create material with zones of hardness and toughness, ideally suited for sword and knife blades. Other samples display the more uniform structure of crucible steel, imported at great expense from distant lands, prized for its exceptional quality, but available only for the most demanding applications. The master blacksmith occasionally pauses in his tool maintenance to examine these materials, running experienced fingers along surfaces that reveal their history and potential to his trained senses. A piece that looks merely like rough metal to our untrained eyes tells him stories of its origin, its carbon content, its suitability for particular applications, and the techniques that will be required to shape it successfully. This ability to read materials represents one of the highest achievements of traditional craftsmanship, the development of sensory discrimination, so refined that it approaches scientific precision while remaining rooted in tactile and visual experience. rather than abstract measurement. As the evening progresses, the workshop settles into an even deeper state of peaceful contemplation. The master completes his tool maintenance and moves to a comfortable chair near the forge, where he takes up a piece of fine metalwork, perhaps a decorative element for a wealthy customer's commission, or a personal project that allows him to explore techniques beyond the demands of everyday utility. Working by the steady light of the fire, he demonstrates the precision and delicacy possible when medieval craftsmanship is applied to artistic rather than purely functional purposes. The apprentice, having completed his sharpening work, begins cleaning and organizing the workshop for the night. His movements have a ritualistic quality that speaks to the deep respect for workspace and tools that characterizes traditional craft cultures. Each tool is returned to its designated location. Each surface is cleaned of metal filings and debris. Each potential fire hazard is identified and secured. These evening rituals serve both practical and spiritual purposes, ensuring readiness for tomorrow's work while providing a sense of completion and closure to the day's activities. In the peaceful atmosphere of the workshop, we become increasingly aware of the profound connections between the blacksmith's craft and the larger rhythms of medieval life. The agricultural tools created here serve farmers whose work feeds the entire community. The horseshoes enable transportation and communication across distances that would otherwise isolate villages from the broader world. The household implements, hinges, latches, cooking implements, and countless other items make possible the domestic life that provides stability and continuity for families and communities. The religious dimension of medieval craftsmanship becomes apparent as we observe the small shrine in the workshop corner, where a candle burns steadily before a simple cross or religious image. This is not merely decorative, but represents the craftsman's understanding of his work as a form of service to God and community. The transformation of raw materials into useful objects was seen as participation in the ongoing work of creation, a way of using divinely granted talents to improve the material conditions of human life, while developing the spiritual qualities of patience, persistence, and attention to excellence. The sounds of the workshop continue to create their gentle meditation soundtrack. The soft crackling of the forge, the occasional scrape of tool against material, the subtle creaking of old wood settling in response to temperature changes. These sounds blend with distant noises from the village, creating an acoustic environment that speaks of human community embedded in natural rhythms, of individual work contributing to collective well-being, of the peaceful integration of human activity with the larger patterns of day and night, season and weather, work and rest. The master's fine work proceeds with the unhurried precision that characterizes true expertise. Each tiny adjustment of his tools, each minute correction of angle or pressure, represents the accumulation of decades of experience refined into intuitive knowledge. His hands move with the confidence of someone who has learned to trust his skills while remaining alert to the subtle feedback that materials provide during the shaping process. This balance between confidence and attention, between routine expertise and moment-to-moment awareness, embodies one of the highest achievements of traditional craftsmanship. As we observe this peaceful scene of evening work, we begin to understand something profound about the nature of meaningful labor. In our modern world, work is often seen as something to be endured, a necessary evil that provides economic support for the real activities of life that occur during leisure time. But here, in the medieval workshop, we witness a different relationship between work and life, where skilled labor provides not just economic support, but also personal fulfillment, social identity, creative expression, and spiritual practice. The apprentice completes his cleaning duties and settles near the master to observe the fine work in progress. This informal instruction represents one of the most valuable aspects of traditional apprenticeship, the opportunity to witness mastery in action, to absorb through observation the subtle techniques and approaches that cannot be captured in written instructions or formal lessons. The apprentice watches with the focused attention of someone who understands that he is witnessing knowledge that has been accumulated over generations and refined through countless hours of practice and application. The workshop's atmosphere of contemplative productivity continues to deepen as the evening progresses. The forge fire burns with steady determination, its flames providing both practical illumination and a focus for meditation on the transformative power of controlled energy. In the dancing patterns of flame and shadow, we can contemplate the ancient human relationship with fire, our species' first great technological achievement, the foundation upon which all subsequent craft and industry has been built. The various projects visible throughout the workshop tell stories of the blacksmith's diverse skills and the community's varied needs. A partially completed set of decorative ironwork for a church commission demonstrates the smith's ability to work as an artist as well as a craftsman, creating objects that serve spiritual as well as practical purposes. Agricultural implements in various stages of completion speak to the seasonal rhythms that govern rural life, with different tools required for plowing, planting, cultivating, and harvest. Household items reflect the intimate connection between the blacksmith's work and daily domestic life, the countless small objects that make civilized living possible, but are so fundamental that they usually pass unnoticed. As the night deepens around the workshop, we find ourselves entering a state of profound contemplation, drawn into the timeless rhythms of fire and metal, skill and tradition that have characterized human craftsmanship for millennia. The forge fire burns with unwavering constancy, its flames creating a hypnotic display of color and movement that seems designed for meditation and peaceful reflection. In this ancient sanctuary of creativity and skill, we begin to perceive the deeper meanings embedded in the seemingly simple act of shaping metal to serve human needs. The master blacksmith has settled into the most delicate phase of his evening work, applying finishing touches to a piece that requires not just technical skill, but artistic sensitivity. His movements have taken on an almost ceremonial quality, each gesture measured and deliberate, reflecting the deep respect for materials and process that characterizes the highest levels of traditional craftsmanship. As we watch his hands work with infinite patience and precision, we begin to understand that we are witnessing not merely the production of a useful object, but the practice of an ancient form of meditation in motion. The tools in his hands seem to move with their own intelligence, extensions of his will and intention shaped by decades of practice into perfect instruments of creative expression. The relationship between craftsman and tool in the medieval world represents a form of intimate partnership rarely seen in our age of mechanized production. Each hammer, each pair of tongs, each file and chisel has been shaped by use into a perfect fit for its owner's hands and working style, while the craftsman has simultaneously shaped his techniques and approaches to take maximum advantage of each tool's particular characteristics and capabilities. The apprentice continues his observation with the focused attention of someone who understands that he is witnessing the transmission of knowledge that cannot be found in any written source. The subtle adjustments of grip and angle, the minute variations in pressure and timing, the almost imperceptible signs that indicate when metal has reached the perfect condition for a particular operation. All of these elements of mastery can only be learned through patient observation and guided practice, passed down through the ancient chain of master and apprentice that connects the present moment to countless generations of skilled craftsmen. In the gentle light of forge and lamp, we can observe the incredible precision possible with traditional hand tools when wielded by expert hands. The surface quality achieved through patient filing and polishing rivals anything produced by modern machinery, while the subtle variations in texture and form that result from handwork give each piece a unique character and beauty impossible to achieve through mass production. This combination of functional excellence with individual character represents one of the great achievements of traditional craft culture, the creation of objects that serve practical needs while also feeding the human hunger for beauty and meaning. The workshop's collection of specialized tools speaks to the sophistication of medieval metalworking technology. Different hammers serve different purposes, some for heavy forging, others for delicate shaping, still others for texturing and finishing work. Tongs come in dozens of specialized forms, each designed to grip particular shapes and sizes of work while providing maximum control and safety. Files range from coarse tools for rapid material removal to finishing files so fine they can produce surfaces approaching mirror brightness. This proliferation of specialized tools reflects centuries of evolutionary development in craft practice, with each generation of smiths building upon the innovations of their predecessors. The raw materials visible in the workshop represent one of the marvels of medieval trade and industry. Iron ore mined from distant locations has been transformed through complex processes of smelting and refining into metal stock ready for the blacksmith's use. Some pieces show the characteristic structure of wrought iron, with its fibrous texture and excellent working properties. Others display the more uniform appearance of cast iron, suitable for applications requiring hardness and wear resistance. The most precious pieces are samples of steel, with carefully controlled carbon content that provides the perfect balance of hardness and toughness required for cutting tools and weapons. As the master works, he occasionally shares observations about the behavior of different materials under various working conditions. These comments, delivered casually during the natural pauses in his work, represent distilled wisdom earned through decades of experience with the subtle variables that affect metalworking success. The importance of temperature control, the recognition of proper working conditions, the understanding of how different alloys respond to heat and mechanical working. All of these elements of technical knowledge are embedded in a broader understanding of materials science that, while lacking modern theoretical frameworks, achieves remarkable, practical accuracy through empirical observation and careful experimentation. The spiritual dimension of medieval craftsmanship becomes increasingly apparent as we settle deeper into the contemplative atmosphere of the workshop. The small shrine in the corner, with its flickering candle and simple religious imagery, reminds us that medieval craftsmen understood their work as a form of service to both God and community. The transformation of raw materials into useful objects was seen as participation in the ongoing work of creation, a way of using divinely granted talents to improve the material conditions of human life while developing the spiritual qualities of patience, persistence, and devotion to excellence. The sounds of the workshop continue to weave their meditative spell. The gentle crackling of the forge fire, the soft scraping of tools against metal, the occasional clink of iron against iron as materials are moved or repositioned. These sounds create a natural rhythm that seems perfectly designed for contemplation and peaceful reflection. A soundtrack that speaks of purposeful human activity conducted in harmony with natural forces and traditional wisdom. The apprentice, having completed his observation of the master's fine work, turns his attention to preparing his own workspace for tomorrow's lessons. His movements reflect the careful attention to order and cleanliness that characterizes traditional craft practice, where respect for tools and materials is understood as both practical necessity and spiritual discipline. Each tool is cleaned and returned to its proper location. Each piece of raw material is secured against loss or damage. Each potential hazard is identified and addressed. These evening rituals serve multiple purposes, ensuring readiness for productive work, developing habits of care and responsibility, and providing a sense of completion and closure to the day's activities. The workshop's atmosphere of contemplative productivity creates a perfect environment for reflection on the nature of human creativity and its relationship to material transformation. Here, surrounded by the tools and products of generations of skilled craftsmen, we can contemplate the patient process by which human beings have learned to shape the natural world, to serve their needs, while respecting its fundamental laws and limitations. The blacksmith's craft represents one of humanity's earliest and most fundamental technologies, yet it continues to embody principles of sustainability, quality, and respect for materials that modern industrial practice might do well to emulate. The interplay of light and shadow created by the forge fire continues to dance across the surfaces of the workshop, highlighting now the gleaming surface of a well-maintained tool, now the rough texture of raw iron stock, now the smooth curves of a completed piece awaiting delivery to its owner. This constantly changing display of illumination creates an environment that seems naturally suited to meditation and contemplation, where the eye finds endless interest in the subtle variations of texture and form that characterize handcrafted objects and traditional working spaces. As we prepare to move deeper into our contemplative journey through the medieval world of craftsmanship, we feel ourselves naturally attuning to the slower, more thoughtful rhythms of pre-industrial life. Here, in this ancient sanctuary of fire and metal, skill and tradition, we begin to understand something profound about the relationship between human beings and their work, about the satisfaction that comes from creating objects of lasting value and beauty, about the deep peace that emerges when we align ourselves with traditional wisdom and time-tested practices. In the profound stillness of the workshop's evening contemplation, we find ourselves transported into states of awareness that transcend the ordinary boundaries between observer and observed, between the individual craftsman and the eternal traditions of human creativity. The forge fire burns with the steady persistence of a meditation flame, its gentle radiance illuminating not just the physical space around us, but also the deeper meanings embedded in the ancient relationship between human skill and natural materials. The master blacksmith has entered that state of absorbed concentration that represents the highest achievement of traditional craftsmanship, a condition where conscious thought gives way to intuitive action, where years of training and practice manifest as effortless competence, where the boundaries between craftsman, tool, and material seem to dissolve into a unified field of creative activity. His hands move with the precision of natural forces, guided by an intelligence that encompasses not just technical knowledge, but also aesthetic sensitivity, spiritual awareness, and deep respect for the traditions that have shaped his understanding of the craft. As we watch this master at work in the gentle light of forge and lamp, we begin to perceive layers of meaning that extend far beyond the simple production of useful objects, each movement of his tools, each subtle adjustment of pressure and angle, each moment of pause for evaluation and planning. All of these elements combine to create a kind of physical poetry, a meditation in motion that connects the present moment to countless generations of skilled craftsmen who have practiced these same techniques in pursuit of excellence and beauty. The workshop itself seems to breathe with the accumulated wisdom of centuries. Every surface bears the marks of purposeful activity, the anvil's top polished to mirror brightness by countless hammer blows, the workbench scarred and stained by generations of projects, the stone walls blackened by decades of forged smoke, but still standing solid and strong. These marks of age and use do not speak of deterioration, but of seasoning, of the way traditional spaces improve with time and careful maintenance, developing character and atmosphere that cannot be replicated in new construction. The apprentice continues his quiet observation, but his attention has deepened beyond simple learning into a state of contemplative absorption that mirrors his master's concentration. In the peaceful atmosphere of the workshop, the usual anxieties and urgencies of daily life seem to fade away, replaced by a profound sense of being present in the moment, fully engaged with the immediate reality of fire and metal, skill and tradition. This quality of absorbed attention represents one of the great gifts of traditional craftsmanship, its ability to create conditions for the kind of focused awareness that modern life often struggles to achieve. The collection of completed work visible throughout the workshop tells the story of human ingenuity and artistic sensitivity applied to the practical needs of daily life. Each piece represents not just functional success, but also aesthetic achievement, demonstrating the medieval craftsman's understanding that beauty and utility need not be separate considerations, but can be integrated into objects that serve both practical and spiritual needs. A simple door hinge shows not just mechanical competence, but also decorative elements that transform a purely functional object into something that feeds the human hunger for beauty and meaning. The raw materials stored throughout the workshop speak to the complex web of relationships that supported even the simplest village craftsman. Iron ore extracted from distant mines, charcoal made from carefully selected woods, specialized tools imported from centers of metalworking excellence. All of these materials represent the cooperation of countless individuals working in different locations and specialties to provide the blacksmith with everything needed for his craft. This interdependence reminds us that even the most individual creative act takes place within a broader context of community cooperation and mutual support. As the evening deepens, the workshop's atmosphere becomes increasingly conducive to states of transcendent awareness. The gentle sounds of fire and metalwork create a natural meditation soundtrack, while the warm light and ancient scents provide sensory conditions that seem designed to facilitate the kind of deep relaxation and contemplative absorption that opens the mind to broader perspectives and deeper understanding. In this peaceful environment, we find ourselves naturally letting go of the mental chatter and physical tension that characterize ordinary consciousness, settling into states of awareness that are both deeply relaxed and perfectly alert. The master's work continues with the unhurried precision that characterizes true mastery. Each tiny adjustment, each minute correction, represents the expression of aesthetic judgment, refined through decades of practice and observation. His ability to recognize the precise moment when a piece has achieved its optimal form, his sensitivity to the subtle feedback that materials provide during the shaping process, his understanding of how different techniques can be combined to achieve specific effects. All of these capabilities represent the accumulation of knowledge that can only be gained through direct experience and patient practice. The spiritual dimension of traditional craftsmanship becomes increasingly apparent as we settle deeper into contemplative awareness. The transformation of raw materials into useful and beautiful objects serves as a powerful metaphor for the spiritual transformation that traditional teachings suggest is possible for human beings themselves. Just as the blacksmith applies heat, pressure, and skilled technique to refine crude iron into tools of precision and beauty, so the practitioner of spiritual discipline applies the heat of sincere effort, the pressure of sustained attention, and the skilled technique of traditional methods to refine the crude materials of ordinary consciousness into instruments of wisdom and compassion. The workshop's collection of specialized tools represents generations of evolutionary development in craft practice. Each tool embodies the accumulated experience of countless craftsmen who have worked to perfect its form and function, gradually refining its shape, weight, and balance to achieve maximum effectiveness for specific applications. This process of gradual improvement through use and feedback demonstrates the way traditional technologies develop through the patient application of human intelligence to practical problems, creating solutions that achieve remarkable efficiency and elegance through evolutionary rather than revolutionary change. The interplay of light and shadow, created by the forge fire, continues to create an environment perfectly suited to contemplative observation. The constantly changing patterns of illumination highlight different aspects of the workshop's contents, creating a visual meditation that seems designed to facilitate the kind of relaxed awareness that allows deeper understanding to emerge naturally. In this gentle, flickering light, ordinary objects take on qualities of beauty and significance that remind us of the potential for finding meaning and inspiration in the most humble and practical aspects of human activity. As we prepare to move even deeper into our contemplative journey, we feel ourselves naturally releasing attachment to the complexities and anxieties of modern life, settling into the timeless rhythms of traditional craftsmanship. Here, in this ancient sanctuary of creativity and skill, we discover conditions that seem naturally conducive to the kind of profound relaxation and expanded awareness that represents the deepest goal of contemplative practice. The workshop becomes a temple, the craftsman a priest of ancient wisdom, and we privileged observers of mysteries that connect the practical work of daily life to the highest aspirations of human consciousness. As the night reaches its deepest point of stillness and contemplation, we find ourselves naturally transitioning from active observation to passive receptivity, allowing the peaceful rhythms of the workshop to guide us toward states of profound relaxation and inner quietude. The forge fire has settled into its nighttime configuration, burning with the steady, hypnotic flame of carefully banked coals that will preserve their heat through the dark hours while providing just enough light to maintain the workshop's atmosphere of contemplative sanctuary. The master blacksmith begins the gradual process of concluding his evening's work, each movement deliberate and ceremonial, reflecting the deep respect for closure and completion that characterizes traditional craft practice. His fine metalwork has reached a natural stopping point, not because the piece is necessarily finished, but because the work has achieved a state of harmony that makes continued effort counterproductive. This understanding of natural rhythms and optimal working periods represents one of the subtlest aspects of traditional craftsmanship, the ability to recognize when to push forward and when to pause, when to apply effort and when to allow natural processes to unfold in their own time. The apprentice, having completed his evening duties, settles into a comfortable position near the forge, where he can continue to absorb the peaceful atmosphere while beginning his own transition toward rest. His posture reflects the relaxed alertness that comes from a day of meaningful work completed with care and attention, his breathing naturally deepening as the workshop's tranquil environment encourages the release of physical tension and mental preoccupation. In his quiet presence, we see reflected the satisfaction that comes from honest labor performed in service of both personal development and community need. The workshop's atmosphere has evolved throughout the evening, from active productivity to contemplative observation to the present state of peaceful preparation for rest. The sounds have gradually simplified and softened, the bold rhythms of hammer on anvil giving way to the gentle scraping of finishing work, then to the quiet crackling of the forge fire and the subtle settling sounds of old timber responding to temperature changes. This natural progression of acoustic environments mirrors the way traditional societies understood the importance of gradual transitions between different states of activity and awareness. The tools that have served faithfully throughout the day now rest in their designated locations, their surfaces reflecting the gentle firelight in patterns that speak of countless hours of skilled use. Each hammer, each pair of tongs, each file and chisel represents not just a functional implement, but also a repository of accumulated experience, shaped by use into perfect instruments for their specific purposes, while simultaneously shaping the techniques and approaches of the craftsmen who wield them. This reciprocal relationship between human skill and material tools embodies one of the fundamental principles of traditional technology, the understanding that the most effective implements emerge through the patient evolution of form and function guided by practical experience and aesthetic sensitivity. The collection of raw materials visible throughout the workshop tells its own story of preparation and potential. Iron stock sorted by size and quality awaits transformation into objects that will serve essential human needs, while finished pieces ready for delivery represent the culmination of the creative process that transforms crude materials into expressions of skill and beauty. This cycle of preparation, transformation, and completion mirrors the larger rhythms of natural and human life, reminding us that all creative activity participates in the eternal dance of potential becoming actual, of possibility manifesting as reality through the application of skill, patience, and dedication. As the master completes his tool maintenance and begins his own preparation for rest, his movements take on an increasingly ritualistic quality. The careful inspection and arrangement of implements, the methodical banking of the forge fire, the gentle adjustment of workshop conditions for the night hours, all of these activities serve both practical and spiritual purposes, ensuring readiness for tomorrow's work, while providing a sense of closure and completion that facilitates the transition from active engagement to receptive rest. The workshop's religious shrine, with its steadily burning candle and simple sacred imagery, reminds us that medieval craftsmen understood their work as participation in a larger cosmic order, where human skill and creativity serve divine purposes while contributing to the ongoing improvement of material conditions for all members of the community. This integration of practical work with spiritual understanding created a framework for daily life that provided meaning and dignity to even the most humble tasks, while connecting individual effort to transcendent values and ultimate purposes. The gentle light from the forge creates an environment perfectly suited to the gradual release of daytime consciousness and the natural emergence of the relaxed awareness that prepares the mind and body for restorative sleep. The dancing patterns of flame and shadow seem designed to facilitate the kind of visual meditation that allows thoughts to settle and anxieties to dissolve, while the warm, enveloping atmosphere provides the physical comfort necessary for deep relaxation and peaceful rest. The master settles into his own comfortable position near the forge, perhaps in a well-worn chair that has served for this evening ritual for many years. His posture reflects the deep satisfaction of someone whose work provides not just economic support, but also personal fulfillment, creative expression, and meaningful service to others. As he gazes into the hypnotic patterns of the fire, his breathing naturally deepens and slows, his facial expression softening into the peaceful relaxation that comes from a day of purposeful activity concluded with proper attention to closure and completion. The apprentice, following his master's example, allows himself to settle into increasingly deep states of relaxation and contemplative absorption. The workshop's atmosphere of ancient wisdom and traditional practice seems to provide a natural environment for the kind of profound rest that restores not just physical energy, but also spiritual vitality and emotional equilibrium. In this peaceful sanctuary, surrounded by the tools and products of generations of skilled craftsmen, the apprentice finds conditions ideally suited to the deep sleep that consolidates learning and prepares the mind and body for renewed engagement with the challenges and opportunities of craft practice. The sounds of the workshop continue to evolve toward perfect conditions for rest and contemplation. The forge fire settles into its quietest configuration, burning with just enough activity to maintain proper temperature while minimizing disturbance to the peaceful atmosphere. The settling sounds of timber and stone create a gentle percussion that speaks of buildings designed to provide security and comfort through the dark hours, while distant sounds from the village, perhaps the soft closing of shutters or the final conversations of neighbors, remind us that we are part of a larger community settling into the restorative rhythms of night. As we prepare to follow the example of master and apprentice in transitioning toward the deep rest that concludes our contemplative journey, we feel ourselves naturally releasing the last remnants of daytime alertness and mental activity. The workshop has become a temple of peace, its ancient walls sheltering us from the complexities of the external world, while its traditional atmosphere provides conditions perfectly suited to the profound relaxation and inner quietude that prepare consciousness for the healing mysteries of sleep. In the deepest sanctuary of night, as the workshop settles into its most profound state of peaceful contemplation, we find ourselves naturally surrendering to the ancient rhythms that govern the transition from waking consciousness to the healing mysteries of sleep. The forge fire burns with the gentle persistence of a meditation flame, its light now soft and golden, creating an atmosphere of such perfect tranquility that the very air seems to breathe with the accumulated wisdom of centuries of peaceful nights spent in this sacred space of craftsmanship and contemplation. The master blacksmith has completed all the evening rituals that mark the transition from day to night, from active engagement to receptive rest. His movements have become increasingly slow and ceremonial, each gesture reflecting the deep understanding of natural rhythms that comes from a lifetime of aligning human activity with the larger patterns of cosmic order. As he settles into his final position of rest, his breathing naturally deepens and slows, his facial expression softening into the profound peace that comes from work well done and consciousness properly prepared for the restorative journey of sleep. The workshop around us has transformed into something approaching a medieval cathedral of rest, its ancient walls and time-tested tools creating an environment that seems specifically designed to facilitate the deepest possible relaxation. and the most complete release from the cares and complexities of waking life. Every surface speaks of patience and permanence, of traditions that have endured for generations and will continue long after our own brief passage through this peaceful sanctuary. In this atmosphere of timeless stability and accumulated wisdom, we find ourselves naturally letting go of the last vestiges of mental activity and physical tension. The apprentice, following the example of his master, has allowed himself to sink into states of relaxation so profound that the boundaries between individual consciousness and the larger field of peaceful awareness seem to dissolve completely. His breathing has become almost imperceptible, his posture reflecting the perfect balance between complete relaxation and natural stability that characterizes the deepest states of meditative rest. In his peaceful presence, we see reflected the ultimate goal of traditional craft practice, not just the production of useful objects, but the cultivation of human consciousness capable of profound peace, sustained attention, and effortless alignment with natural and cosmic rhythms. The forge fire continues its gentle crackling, but even these sounds have become softer and more rhythmic, creating an acoustic environment that seems perfectly calibrated to support the transition into sleep. The flames dance with hypnotic beauty, their patterns creating a visual meditation that draws the eye into increasingly deep states of relaxed absorption. As we gaze into this ancient fire, we feel our own consciousness naturally settling into the receptive awareness that precedes and facilitates the healing journey of sleep. The tools and materials of the workshop, illuminated by the gentle firelight, seem to radiate their own peaceful energy, as if the accumulated labor and dedication of generations of craftsmen has imbued these simple objects with something approaching sacred presence. Each hammer and tongs, each piece of worked iron, each carefully maintained surface speaks of human hands guided by traditional wisdom in service of both practical needs and transcendent values. In this environment of consecrated labor and ancient practice, we find ourselves naturally attuning to frequencies of awareness that transcend the ordinary boundaries of individual consciousness. The workshop's collection of completed work, visible in the gentle shadows cast by the forge light, tells the story of human creativity applied to the eternal task of transforming raw materials into objects of beauty and utility. But now, in the deep peace of night, these practical achievements take on qualities of spiritual significance, reminding us that all genuine creative activity participates in the cosmic process of manifestation, where formless potential takes on specific expression through the patient application of skill, dedication, and love. The master's breathing has become so deep and regular that it seems to merge with the natural rhythms of the workshop itself, the gentle crackling of the fire, the subtle settling of timber and stone, the almost imperceptible movement of air through the carefully designed spaces that provide both warmth and ventilation. His consciousness appears to have settled into that profound state of rest that traditional teachings describe as the gateway to the deepest mysteries of sleep, where individual awareness dissolves into the larger field of cosmic consciousness that underlies all particular forms and phenomena. The apprentice's own journey into sleep reflects the natural conclusion of a day spent in meaningful labor and contemplative observation. His face, relaxed in the gentle firelight, shows the peace that comes from honest work, performed with attention and care, from skills developed through patient practice, from participation in traditions that connect individual effort to larger purposes and transcendent values. As we watch his breathing deepen and slow, we see reflected our own natural movement toward the restorative states that will prepare consciousness for renewal and awakening. The workshop's atmosphere has become so conducive to deep rest that even the act of conscious observation seems to dissolve into something more like participatory awareness, where the boundaries between observer and observed fade into a unified field of peaceful presence. The ancient walls seem to breathe with accumulated wisdom. The time-tested tools radiate their own quiet energy, and the gentle fire provides just enough light to maintain connection with the physical world while facilitating the gradual release that prepares consciousness for its nightly journey into the healing darkness of sleep. As the last conscious thoughts begin to fade into the approaching embrace of a sleep, we feel ourselves naturally surrendering to the profound trust that this ancient sanctuary inspires. Here, surrounded by the tools and products of generations of skilled craftsmen, warmed by fire that connects us to the earliest human discoveries, breathing air perfumed with the honest scents of wood and metal, and purposeful labor, we find ourselves in conditions perfectly designed for the deepest possible rest and the most complete release from all forms of tension and preoccupation. The forge fire settles into its final configuration for the night, burning with just enough flame to maintain its life through the dark hours, while creating conditions of optimal peace for the sleep that now approaches like a gentle tide. The light grows softer and more golden, the sounds more rhythmic and hypnotic, the atmosphere more conducive to the complete surrender that allows consciousness to make its natural transition from waking awareness to the healing mysteries of dream and deep sleep. In this sacred space, where fire and iron have been combined by human skill for countless generations, where traditional wisdom has been preserved and transmitted through the patient relationship between master and apprentice, where the practical needs of daily life have been met through the application of dedication, skill, and love, we find ourselves naturally releasing into the profound rest that restores both body and soul. The workshop becomes a temple of peace, the craftsmen, priests of ancient wisdom, and we privileged participants in the eternal human journey toward the healing darkness, where consciousness is renewed and prepared for the endless creative possibilities of each new dawn. As sleep gently embraces us in this sanctuary of traditional wisdom and ancient peace, we carry with us the deep satisfaction of having witnessed the timeless dance of human creativity, the profound contentment that comes from observing work performed with skill and dedication, and the healing peace that emerges when we align ourselves with rhythms older and more fundamental than the urgent complexities of modern life. In the gentle darkness that now enfolds us, we rest in the confidence that we have touched something eternal and true, something that will continue to nurture and sustain us long after this peaceful night has passed into memory. The last flicker of conscious awareness dissolves into the infinite peace of sleep, carrying us into dreams filled with the ancient wisdom of fire and metal, skill and tradition, master and apprentice working together in the sacred dance of human creativity that connects each individual moment to the eternal patterns of cosmic order and divine love. In this final surrender to the healing mysteries of night, we find the deepest rest, the most complete peace, and the perfect preparation for whatever creative possibilities await us in the dawning light of tomorrow's endless potential.